The light was impossible, a searing white fire that held me in place while it unmade me. I felt my bones dissolve and my muscles twist into new and terrifying shapes. A scream tore from my throat, but the sound was not my own. It was a high, feminine shriek of pure agony. When the light finally faded and I collapsed to the floor, the first thing I noticed was the scent of lavender and vanilla. The scent of her. Before my world was ripped apart and stitched back together in the wrong shape, I was Leo. And my oldest friend, or more accurately, my oldest follower, was Ethan. Our dynamic was forged in the fires of high school insecurity and had calcified over the subsequent decade. I was the sun, he was the planet who dutifully orbited me, reflecting my light and making me seem brighter by comparison. He was the quiet, steady one who'd help me cram for an exam, spot me rent money, and listen patiently to my endless stories of conquest. I kept him around because his loyalty was a comfortable, ego-stroking cushion against the harsh realities of my own mediocrity. After college, our paths diverged on the surface, but remained tangled beneath. Ethan, with his quiet brilliance, landed a lucrative job as a software engineer, building a stable, respectable life. I drifted, bartending my way through my 20s, leveraging a quick smile and a practice charm that was beginning to wear thin at the edges. I lived in a state of perpetual chaos, and Ethan was my ever-reliable safety net. He was the background character, the indispensable but uncredited supporting actor in the movie of my life. And I, in my thoughtless arrogance, assumed it would always be that way. Then he met Clara. He didn't just meet her, he was illuminated by her. She worked in marketing for a client of his firm, and from the first photo he nervously showed me, I felt a toxic cocktail of desire and resentment curdle in my gut. She was incandescent. Not just beautiful in a generic, catalog model way, but vibrant, with intelligent blue eyes that seemed to see right through you and a laugh that, even in a short video clip, sounded like pure joy. What a woman like that saw in quiet, unassuming Ethan was a mystery I couldn't solve. Why she stayed with him was an affront to the natural order I had built in my mind. For months, I was a reluctant third wheel, watching their love story unfold with a growing, cancerous envy. I saw the way she looked at him with a fierce, protective pride that made my stomach clench. I saw the way he blossomed under her attention, his quiet confidence growing, his shoulders seeming broader. He was happier than I had ever seen him, and every ounce of his joy felt like a personal judgment on my own empty, transient life. He was supposed to be in my shadow, but his life was suddenly casting a shadow over mine. The bitterness festered. Then came the night that broke everything. Ethan was stuck at the office, pushing through a brutal deadline. Clara, disappointed and lonely, texted him, and he suggested she and I grab a bite to keep her company. My treat, his text to me read. A familiar pang of resentment hit me, even in his absence. He was paying for me. I met her at a quiet wine bar downtown. I laid the charm on thick, playing the part of the concerned friend. One glass of wine became two, then a bottle. She talked about Ethan, about how proud she was of him, how much she missed him when he worked these long hours. Every word of praise for him was a hot poker against my ego. He's lucky to have you, I said, my voice smooth as silk. I hope he knows that. A guy like him, he doesn't find a woman like you twice. It was a backhanded compliment, a seed of doubt planted in the fertile soil of her loneliness. I didn't have a concrete plan, not really. It was more of a dark, subconscious current pulling me forward. When her speech started to slur and her movements became unsteady, I made my move. I covered her hand with mine. She hesitated, her brow furrowing as she mumbled Ethan's name. He's too busy for you tonight, I whispered, leaning closer. He doesn't appreciate what he has right in front of him. But I do. A flicker of something, curiosity, recklessness, the thrill of the forbidden flashed in her alcohol-glazed eyes. She leaned in and kissed me. We ended up back at her apartment, the one she shared with him. It was a betrayal in stereo. The act itself was a fever dream, fueled by my bitter resentment and her drunken, reckless abandon. I wasn't making love to a woman, I was conquering a territory, taking the most precious thing from the man I had secretly resented for years. Afterward, we lay in the tangled sheets of their bed. There was no remorse on her face, only a giddy, exhilarated flush. She laughed, a low, throaty sound, thoroughly pleased with her transgression. "That was fun," she said, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. "Our little secret." Then her phone rang, illuminating the nightstand. "Ethan." Her smile faltered for a second before she answered, her voice a little too bright. I watched as her expression crumbled while she listened to him. I couldn't hear his words, but I saw their effect. "I love you, too," she whispered, a tear tracing a path through her foundation. "I'll see you in the morning." She hung up, and the full weight of her actions crashed down on her. The giddy thrill was gone, replaced by a look of sheer horror. "You need to leave," she said, her voice shaking with a sudden, violent sobriety. "Now. This was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. Get out." I stumbled out of their apartment and into the pre-dawn chill, the city air feeling thin and sharp in my lungs. My mind was a chaotic storm of conflicting emotions. A sickening wave of guilt washed over me, the kind that leaves a sour taste in your mouth. But beneath it, ugly and undeniable, was a triumphant thrill. I had won. I had taken the one thing Ethan had that I coveted, proving to myself that the old hierarchy was still in place. I was still the one who got the girl. I told myself she'd calm down, that this would blow over. Ethan had forgiven me for a decade of lesser sins. Surely, he'd swallow this one too. He always did. The next day, my phone rang. It was Clara. Her voice wasn't just angry, it was shredded, raw with a potent mixture of self-loathing and pure, unadulterated fury. "I told him," she choked out, the words broken by ragged sobs. "I told him everything, Leo. And now he's gone. The best man I have ever known is gone because of you." "Clara, wait," I started, my own voice slick with a practiced, false sincerity. "It takes two. We both made a mistake." "A mistake?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I made a mistake. You are a parasite. You saw something good and you had to poison it because you can't stand to see anyone else happy." The accuracy of her words hit me like a physical blow. "He loved me," she sobbed, her grief now overwhelming her anger. "And I threw it all away for someone like you." Her tone shifted again, becoming dangerously cold. "Stay away from me. Stay away from him. If I ever see your face again, I swear to God." She didn't finish the threat. The line went dead. A week of agonizing silence followed. I oscillated between a growing dread and a foolish, arrogant confidence. I half expected a call from a defeated Ethan, his voice thick with pain, asking how I could do this to him. I had my excuses ready, my apologies polished. But the call never came. The silence was more unnerving than any confrontation. In my hubris, I interpreted it as weakness, as him retreating to lick his wounds, just as he always had. I had fundamentally underestimated the man I claimed to know so well. Then, on a Tuesday night exactly 1 week after Clara's call, my phone buzzed. A text from her number. "Come over. We need to talk." My heart hammered against my ribs. Relief warred with apprehension. Had she convinced him to forgive her? Did she want to form a united front, to beg for his forgiveness together? Or did she just want to scream at me again? Whatever it was, I had to go. I had to control the narrative. I walked to her apartment, rehearsing my lines, still believing I was the protagonist in this drama. I had no idea I was walking into my own execution. The apartment was dark when I arrived, bathed in the cold, blue glow of the city lights outside. "Clara," I called out, my voice echoing in the silence. The air was heavy still. Then a figure detached itself from the shadows of the living room. It was Ethan. "Hey, buddy," I said, forcing a casualness I didn't feel. A knot of pure fear was tightening in my stomach. "What are you doing here?" His face was a mask of eerie tranquility. There was no rage in his eyes, no grief, just a chilling, absolute calm. "I know everything, Leo," he said, his voice level. Clara was very thorough in her confession. I opened my mouth to spin some lie, to craft an excuse, but he raised a hand, silencing me. "Save it," he said, the words sharp as glass. "She told me all about your night together. How you took advantage of her. And how, in the end, it was completely consensual. That makes your betrayal so much purer, doesn't it?" She chose you, my best friend, over me. Look, man, it wasn't like that. Wasn't it? His voice never rose, but its quiet intensity was more terrifying than any shout. Can you explain why the one person I trusted in the world would try to steal the only good thing in my life? Where's Clara? I asked, my eyes darting around the dark apartment, a primal need for an ally, a witness, rising within me. A small, unsettling smile touched Ethan's lips. Don't worry about Clara. She and I have come to an understanding. She's learned a valuable lesson about consequences. The way he said it, with such finality, sent a tremor of real terror through me. But now it's your turn. Before I could react, before I could even process the threat, he raised his hand. An unnatural light, a sickly green-white glow, began to crawl over his palm like liquid phosphorus. I tried to step back, to run, but my muscles locked, seized by an invisible force that rooted me to the spot. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. What the hell is this? I grunted, my body straining against its unseen bonds. This, Ethan said, the strange light reflecting in his now merciless eyes, is what happens when you finally push the quiet man too far. The light exploded from his hand, a blinding, silent wave that engulfed me in an inferno of pure energy. And the world, as I knew it, ended. The light was not just a light, it was a physical force, a torrent of raw power that tore into me at a molecular level. It felt like being flayed, atom by atom. Every cell in my body screamed as it was unwritten, its biological code violently erased and rewritten with a foreign, terrifying syntax. I was being unmade and remade simultaneously, a process so agonizing that my mind fractured. I tried to scream, but the sound that ripped from my throat was a high, piercing shriek that didn't belong to me. It was the sound of a woman's terror. When the light finally receded, the invisible force holding me vanished, and I collapsed onto the plush living room rug. My body felt alien. Impossibly light, fragile, and fundamentally wrong. The air I gasped into my lungs felt different. The clothes I was wearing were soft and constricting in unfamiliar places. My own hands, when I pushed myself up, were slender and delicate, the nails perfectly manicured. I looked down and saw not my familiar worn jeans and t-shirt, but a silk blouse and a tailored skirt. And beneath the blouse, the soft, undeniable weight of breasts. What? I began, but the voice that emerged was a breathy, melodic alto. It was Clara's voice. Ethan stood over me, his face no longer calm but alight with a cold, triumphant satisfaction. The eerie glow had faded from his hand, but the power he now wielded hung in the air like ozone after a lightning strike. "Look at you, Leo," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Or should I call you Clara now?" A wave of vertigo and nausea washed over me. I scrambled to my feet, my new, smaller feet, which felt miles away, and stumbled toward the hallway mirror. The reflection that stared back was not my own. It was her. Clara's face, framed by waves of blonde hair, her wide, terrified blue eyes, her lips, parted in a silent scream. My face now. "No. No, Ethan, please, not like this," I begged, the words tumbling out in that strange, feminine voice. I turned to face him, the sight of my own former friend now a terrifying source of judgment. "We're friends, man. Best friends." The word friends seemed to trigger something in him. A mask of cold fury slammed down over his features. Friends? Friends don't systematically use each other for years. Friends don't betray each other by sleeping with the woman they love. You were never my friend, Leo. You were a leech. And leeches need to be taught a lesson. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the apology genuine for the first time in my life. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this," he snarled. "You took her from me. For one night, you had to have what was mine. So now, you get to be what's mine." "But how?" I gestured wildly at my new body, my mind struggling to bridge the gap between what I knew and what I was seeing. "This isn't possible." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You were never very observant, were you? You saw a quiet tech nerd. You never bothered to look deeper, to ask what I actually did, what I was capable of. Let's just say my work involves unconventional physics. And I've become very, very good at it." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. I've made you into a perfect copy of the woman you just had to have. A flawless replica, right down to the last detail. A new, chilling thought pierced through my panic. What about the real Clara? I asked, my voice trembling. What did you do to her? Ethan's smile was a razor's edge. She's safe. Contained. In a place where she can reflect on her choices without being a distraction. All you need to know is that she's not your problem. You are your problem now. How long? I whispered, afraid of the answer. How long do I have to be like this? He shrugged, a casual gesture that was profoundly cruel. I haven't decided. Maybe a week. Maybe a year. Maybe forever. It depends on how convincing your apology is. The finality in his tone was like a door slamming shut in my soul. I couldn't be this forever. I couldn't be a woman, be her, for the rest of my life. Desperation, raw and clawing, surged through me. I had to fix this. I had to reach the man I had once called my friend, the man buried deep beneath this cold, powerful stranger. I took a stumbling step toward him. Ethan, please. I know what I did was unforgivable. It was the worst thing I have ever done in my life. But please, just give me a chance to make it right. I'll do anything. He stared at me, his eyes cold and unmoving, offering no hope, no flicker of the old Ethan I knew. My mind raced, searching for some lever, some way to reach him. He had lost Clara because she chose me. His pain was born from that specific betrayal, that specific act. A terrible, desperate idea, born of pure animal panic, began to form. Maybe if I gave him what he was denied, if I undid the choice she made. With trembling hands that didn't feel like my own, I dropped to my knees before him. The fabric of the skirt pulled around me on the floor. I looked up at him, my vision blurred by tears that were now streaming from Clara's blue eyes. Please, Ethan, I begged, my new voice cracking. Let me show you how sorry I am. I reached for the buckle of his belt. Ethan didn't move. He didn't stop me, but he didn't encourage me either. He simply stood there, a stone monolith of judgment, his face unreadable as my new, clumsy fingers fumbled with the unfamiliar mechanics of his belt. My old hands could have done it in a second, but these slender, delicate digits seemed to have a will of their own. It was a desperate, humiliating act of supplication, an apology offered in the most debased language I could conjure in my panic. Every movement was a plea for mercy, a frantic attempt to rewind time and undo the damage I had caused. When it was over, I remained on my knees, looking up at him with the hopeful, terrified eyes of a supplicant awaiting a verdict. The silence in the apartment was a roaring abyss. Ethan? I ventured, my voice, Clara's voice, barely a whisper. Did that help? Are you any closer to forgiving me? To changing me back? He slowly fastened his pants, his movements deliberate and unhurried, each second stretching into an eternity. I don't know, he said finally, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. But don't think for a second that one act erases a decade of you treating me like dirt. Of course not, I said quickly, a fragile tendril of relief winding through me at the small, non-committal acknowledgement. He hadn't said no. I know it will take more. I know I have to prove it. I will. He gave a single, sharp nod, then turned and walked to the door. I need time to think. I'll be back tomorrow. The click of the door latch echoed in the cavernous silence. I remained on the floor for a long time, the rough texture of the rug pressing into my knees, trying to process the sheer, mind-bending insanity of the last hour. I was in Clara's body. I had her voice, her hands, her face. I looked down at myself, at the elegant silk blouse and the dark, expensive skirt, and a wave of psychic whiplash so powerful I thought I might vomit washed over me. Eventually, on legs that felt like stilts, I made my way to her bedroom, my bedroom now. I stood before the full-length mirror, a silent, horrified spectator to my own impossible transformation. It was her. The woman from the pictures, the woman I had slept with, staring back at me with my own panicked consciousness trapped behind her eyes. Slowly, with trembling hands, I began to unbutton the blouse. It slipped from my shoulders, revealing a delicate lace bra. I unzipped the skirt and let it fall, pulling at my ankles, exposing a matching pair of panties. The sight was a surreal tableau of violation and consequence. Me, Leo, wearing her intimate apparel. I turned from side to side, a grotesque parody of a woman examining her figure. The unfamiliar weight of my breasts, the shocking narrowness of my waist, the gentle, foreign curve of my hips, it was a landscape I had desired and now was forced to inhabit. I reached behind my back, my fingers struggling with the bra's clasp until it finally gave way. I shrugged it off, then slid the panties down my legs, standing completely naked before the mirror. This was Clara's body. Every inch of it, from the soft skin to the elegant bone structure, was now mine. The reality of it slammed into me with the force of a physical blow, bringing with it a confusing maelstrom of fear, humiliation, disgust, and a tiny, terrifying flicker of something else, a morbid, scientific curiosity. I needed a shower. I needed to wash away the scent of my own fear and the lingering feel of Ethan's judgment. As I stepped into the bathroom, I caught my reflection again in the mirror over the sink. It was still jarring to see her lips move when I thought the words, her eyes widen when my own panic flared. I turned on the water, the steam filling the small room, and stepped inside. The shower was a journey into uncharted territory. Hot water on the skin was a different experience, a heightened sensitivity that bordered on overwhelming. I explored the new topography of my body with a detached, clinical precision. The soft swell of my breasts, their surprising sensitivity, the flat plane of my stomach, the curve of my thighs. My hands, guided by a grim necessity, ventured lower. I discovered the intricate, delicate geography of this new form, a landscape of shocking sensitivity and hidden potential. By the time I stepped out of the shower, wrapped in one of her soft, oversized towels, I had gained a crucial, disturbing understanding of the body I now wore, knowledge I knew I would have to use to my advantage. That night, lying awake in her bed, staring at a ceiling that was supposed to be Ethan's, my new reality began to truly sink in. How long would he keep me like this? What was I supposed to do? Live her life? The thought was terrifying. I didn't know the first thing about being a woman, let alone being Clara. The next few days were a brutal, immersive crash course in femininity. I learned, through frustrating trial and error, the arcane arts of makeup application, discovering the difference between foundation and concealer, mascara and eyeliner. I fought a losing battle with her hairstyling tools. I nearly broke an ankle attempting to walk in a pair of her heels. I raided her closet, a bewildering forest of fabrics and styles I couldn't comprehend, trying to piece together a sense of the woman whose life I had stolen. What shocked me most, however, was the way the world looked back at me. When I finally worked up the courage to go to the grocery store, I felt like I was walking through a field of live wires. Men's eyes were a constant, tangible pressure. Some glances were openly appreciative, others were subtle, lingering assessments. A man held the door for me, calling me ma'am. The cashier called me sweetheart. It was a constant, low-grade hum of being seen, evaluated, and categorized in a way I had never experienced as a man. It was utterly disorienting. And there was a flip side, a creeping, unfamiliar vulnerability. Walking back to the apartment as dusk fell, the sound of footsteps behind me sent a jolt of primal fear through me that was completely new. I clutched the keys in my hand, my knuckles white, a stranger in a world that suddenly felt filled with latent threat. I was no longer a predator, I was prey. When Ethan returned the next evening, I was as prepared as I could be. I had spent the afternoon in a state of high anxiety, a general preparing for a crucial diplomatic negotiation. I'd chosen an outfit from Clara's wardrobe, a simple, elegant navy blue dress that was modest but flattering, and spent over an hour on my makeup, following a tutorial on her laptop until the face in the mirror looked less like a panicked hostage and more like a composed, beautiful woman. I had rehearsed my apology, refining the words until they sounded not just sincere, but profound. The moment he walked in, I launched my offensive. "Ethan," I said, my practiced voice soft and steady. "I've been doing nothing but thinking. About what I did. About who I was." I took a step toward him, deliberately keeping my hands clasped in front of me, a posture of non-threatening contrition. I never saw it before. I never saw how selfish I was, how I used our friendship, how I used you. I treated you like a supporting character in my story, and I am so sorry for that. He said nothing. He just watched me, his face a careful, neutral mask, those intelligent eyes evaluating my every word, every gesture. This, I continued, gesturing to my new body, this is a nightmare. But it's also been an education. I'm starting to see things I was blind to before. And I want to make it right. I want to show you, truly show you, how much I regret what I did. Not just for what happened with Clara, but for everything. For 20 years of being a bad friend. I saw a flicker of something in his expression. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was interest. He was listening. Please, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper as I closed the remaining distance between us. Let me show you. That night, I welcomed him into Clara's bed, my bed. It was a surreal, terrifying, and profoundly enlightening experience. I was both a participant and a spectator, my old male mind observing as this new female body responded with an instinct and intensity that was utterly foreign. I had spent a lifetime viewing sex as a conquest, an act of taking. But this was different. This was an act of surrender, of receiving, and in that surrender, I experienced sensations that dwarfed anything I had known before. It was deeper, more holistic, a symphony played on an instrument I was only just learning to tune. Afterward, as we lay in the quiet darkness, I dared to ask the question that hung between us. Does this help? I whispered. Am I any closer to earning your forgiveness? He was silent for a long moment. Then he turned his head on the pillow to look at me. I still don't know, he said, his voice softer than before. But we'll see. That we'll see became the rhythm of my new existence. The days blurred into weeks, settling into a strange, domestic routine. Ethan would visit every few days, his demeanor shifting slowly from that of a cold, vengeful god to something more complex, a wary, watchful observer. And each time he came, I would try to atone, using the only currency I had, this body, and the growing, terrifying sincerity of my regret. Between his visits, I was forced to become Clara. I found her work files, her client lists, her project deadlines. She was a freelance graphic designer, a world as alien to me as the surface of Mars. But propelled by a primal fear of being discovered, I dove in. I spent hours watching design tutorials, mimicking her style, and bluffing my way through client emails. I was clumsy at first, but desperation is a powerful teacher. And then a strange and unexpected thing began to happen. The sharp, constant edges of my panic and humiliation started to soften. The initial shock was fading, replaced by a creeping, insidious sense of comfort. I was adapting. I found a strange pleasure in the morning ritual of makeup, the quiet artistry of it. I started to appreciate the feel of soft fabrics against my skin, the way a well-cut dress could make me feel graceful. I was getting better at navigating the world as a woman, learning to deflect unwanted attention with a cold stare and to leverage the reflexive kindness of strangers when I needed it. The most disturbing part was my relationship with my own body. In the quiet moments alone, driven by a mixture of loneliness and biological curiosity, I continued my explorations. The experiences were enlightening, a constant discovery of this body's capacity for pleasure. But they always left me with a hollow, lingering sense of incompleteness. A feeling that was only ever filled when Ethan was with me. This realization was a cold spike of fear in my gut. I was supposed to be performing penance. This was a punishment, a means to an end, the end being the return of my own body. I wasn't supposed to be enjoying parts of it. I wasn't supposed to be adapting so well. And I certainly wasn't supposed to be looking forward to Ethan's visits with a desperate, burgeoning eagerness that had nothing to do with atonement and everything to do with a craving for his touch, his presence. The lines were blurring, and I was terrified of what I was becoming. 1 month to the day after my transformation, I was curled on the sofa, lost in one of Clara's novels, when my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Coming over tonight. We need to talk. My heart seized. It wasn't the usual casual on my way. The addition of those 4 words, we need to talk, sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through me. This was it. The verdict. Was he finally going to change me back? The thought, which should have been a beacon of pure joy, instead filled me with a turbulent mix of emotions. There was relief, of course, a desperate yearning for my old, familiar self. But beneath it was a strange and unwelcome pang of loss. Loss for this body I had come to inhabit, loss for the strange intimacy I had forged with Ethan, loss for the woman I was becoming. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a frenzy of preparation, a condemned prisoner meticulously choosing my last outfit. I showered, styled my hair with a skill that would have been unimaginable a month ago, and applied my makeup with the precision of a painter. By the time I heard his key in the lock, I was a tightly wound spring of anticipation and dread. He entered the apartment with a somber, unreadable expression. "We need to talk," he said again, his voice leaving no room for pleasantries. "About what?" I asked, my own voice a breathy whisper. "About Clara," he replied. "The real Clara." My blood ran cold. "What about her?" Without another word, he walked toward the bedroom. I followed, a thousand terrible possibilities racing through my mind. Had he hurt her? Was she gone forever? He stopped beside the bedside table, beside the elegant, modern lamp that had been there since the beginning. He placed his hand on its smooth, ceramic base. "It's time," he said softly. Before I could ask what he meant, the lamp began to hum, emitting a soft, internal glow. The light intensified, pulsing, spilling out into the room and coalescing into a shimmering, human-shaped silhouette. It was the same impossible light that had unmade me, but this time it was building, creating. When the brilliance finally faded, a figure stood there, blinking in the sudden dimness, looking disoriented but unmistakably solid. It was Clara. The real Clara. "Clara," I gasped, the sound of her name in her own voice a surreal echo. She looked at me, her eyes widening in shock. Then she looked at Ethan, and a flicker of something else crossed her face, not confusion, but a dawning, horrified understanding. "She's been here the whole time," Ethan explained, his voice gentle in a way I hadn't heard since before that fateful night. He placed a protective hand on the real Clara's shoulder. "Trapped, but aware. Watching, listening, seeing everything that's happened." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Every moment of the past month replayed in my mind, now tainted with the knowledge of her silent, spectral presence. Every fumbled attempt at femininity, every private moment of discovery, every humiliating act of penance, every night with Ethan, she had seen it all. She had been a prisoner in her own home, forced to watch me live her life and sleep with her man. I started, but the words died in my throat. What could I possibly say? How could I justify what I had become in her eyes? "I've seen everything," Clara said, her own voice sounding strange and rusty. "Every moment since you took my body. I know what you've been doing with it. With him." I looked down, the shame so profound it felt like a physical weight, crushing the air from my lungs. "And I understand why you did it," she continued, and the words were so unexpected they snapped my head up. "I've watched you learn what it feels like to be vulnerable, to be looked at, to be less. I've seen you discover what I've always known, that Ethan is a remarkable man, in more ways than one." "You're not angry?" I stammered. Her expression hardened instantly. "Of course I'm angry. I made a stupid, terrible mistake that night. I betrayed the best thing that ever happened to me." Her gaze shifted to Ethan, filled with a desperate, pleading love. Then she looked back at me, and her eyes were filled with a raw, possessive fire. "But the hardest part has been watching him with you. In my body. Every time he touched you, it was torture." "Ethan is mine," she declared, her voice ringing with absolute certainty. "I've had a month as a goddamn lamp to realize the depth of my foolishness. I will never betray him again. And I will not share him." Ethan pulled her into his side, a gesture of ownership and forgiveness. "Clara has learned her lesson," he said, his words directed at me. "And I've decided to forgive her." He paused, his gaze fixing on me, cold and clinical once more. "The question is, what do we do with you?" This was it. The moment of my release. But as I opened my mouth to beg for my old life, Clara stepped forward, positioning herself between me and Ethan. "It's obvious what you do," she said, her voice sharp with jealousy. "You change him back. Now." I don't want someone with my face anywhere near my man. She glared at me, her blue eyes blazing. You've had your lesson, Leo. Go back to your pathetic life and stay away from us. Ethan looked at me, a single, questioning eyebrow raised. Is that what you want? To go back? Did I? Did I want to return to that empty, lonely existence? To the man who had been so consumed by envy that he destroyed 3 lives? Compared to the profound, transformative experiences of the last month, my old life seemed like a black and white photograph. But what was the alternative? To remain a copy, a shadow? Before I could find the words, Clara's jealousy won the day. Of course, that's what he wants, she insisted, her voice rising. Why would he want to stay like this? Change him back, Ethan. I don't want to look at myself and see him anymore. Ethan studied my conflicted face for a moment, then gave a slow, decisive nod. I suppose the punishment has served its purpose. He raised his hand. The familiar, terrifying glow began to emanate from his palm. Wait, I started to say, a sudden, desperate protest rising in my throat. But it was too late. The light hit me, and the world dissolved once more into a symphony of agony and transformation. When it faded, I looked down to see my own large, clumsy hands, my familiar jeans and t-shirt. I stumbled to the mirror and there he was, Leo. Haggard, haunted, but undeniably me. It's done, Ethan said, his voice distant. Thank you, I managed to say, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. Good, Clara said, her voice tight with satisfaction. Now get out. I left without another word, walking out of the apartment that had been my prison, my school, and my home. As I stepped onto the street, back in my own skin, everything felt wrong. The world seemed muted, the colors dull. My own body felt heavy, brutish, and numb. But I kept walking, away from them, away from her, and into the wreckage of my former life.